I'm a smiling sinner, a sinner in my grave. But don't do a spirit that never.
I remember at the time we were so bitter towards each other with blaming and trying to figure out how come it had all gone so badly wrong.
Why are these chains around my neck constantly?
Well, what happened in the birth of my twins was that the first baby was born fine, great birth. The second baby had a lack of oxygen, and he, to cut a long story short, had brain damage. It wasn't sure then whether he would be able to recover. He was severely ill. He was having apneas, he couldn't swallow, he couldn't suck, he couldn't move, he had epilepsy, he had a cerebral palsy, he couldn't blink, he had an unconceivably difficult life, and yet he was still alive, and it wasn't sure if he would improve, if he would recover, if he would. Best case scenario was he may just be a clumsy adult. It was intensely stressful having a disabled child. He needed drugs, he needed care continually. Whenever we needed to go out, if it wasn't taking him, it was getting respite and having community nurses come in. He was continually having apneas where he would stop breathing, so it was horrendous. I mean, at the same time, there was a whole load of other stuff going on about the legal situation of what had actually happened at his birth, and that was a whole other nightmare happening. So we were living in a nightmare for those whole 9 months while he was alive and yet kind of dying. And we didn't know that, so we just knew that we had a very disabled child, that we thought he might get better, he might pull through, he had brain damage, so he might have, little babies can rewire their own brains, so there was always that hope. But in terms of me and my partner, my husband, it was horrendous. And at the same time, my partner's business was under intense stress. He had left people in charge who were then leaving and juggling one healthy twin with one disabled twin. So then had apneas, and they became worse and worse, and his condition didn't improve. And when he was 9 months old, he died. We're so good as a culture of bottling ourselves up and saying, yes, I'm fine, and yet when we let go of that and look to where the feelings are, where in our body we're feeling something, and it usually is located somewhere physically that we can actually give attention to that place, and that in itself brings a whole kind of alignment of strength and force, of giving attention to our body, of being able to see what's happening and where it is and what the feeling is, and giving it shape and giving it texture and tempo and giving it expression. And so for someone coming in feeling grief like I was, being able to feel the weight of that, to give that breath, to connect in with the archetype of grieving mothers in the whole of history, to know that I'm not alone in that place of having lost a child in a horrendous situation. That is amazingly supportive. It kind of moved me beyond space and time and gave me a whole network of feeling connected as a human being going through something that I didn't want to be going through, but I was. And so I think for any of us having any feeling of any crisis situation, we're not alone. It's likely that it has happened before. And so moving with it is an incredible way of bringing ourselves into a simple place of humanity.
For in this temple, I feel no torment.
So doing this dance practice at that time of great crisis in my life was a way, and I saw the dance then as a way of really coping with everything I was going through and the torturous situation I was in, and then how realising that I could deal with it and I was going to survive it and I was going to cope, and I was resilient and resourced. And that was one huge way, and seemingly very simple, of going into a movement session, moving and feeling all the feelings and being able to express that, and then going home and carrying on with what needed to be done. And I have now become a teacher of this work, and really I was shaped by that time. And it was that time when everything was in complete crisis, when I saw that this movement practice was way more than I had imagined it was, and it was a way of really seeing things from a whole different perspective, and all the things that we're stuck with, of moving through them and transforming how we're feeling from one situation into another. So on the one hand, the dance it can be a space of letting go of a cathartic release, of having all of those feelings and just being able to express them and shake it out. And within that, then there's kind of nuances of ways of expression, ways of kind of cellularly remembering how we're feeling when we're not on the dance floor. So the idea in Open Floor is to take it from the dance floor into life. So it's more than just doing our dance, it's finding ways of moving with how we are and being as attentive to that, so that we can do it in an ordinary situation. We had good support, we had good therapy, we had friends, we had one healthy twin who then would kind of, who I think I was living for and keeping myself intact for. Our community nurses were also giving palliative care to our neighbours who were in a strangely similar situation. And after months of hearing about our neighbours, eventually, through somebody else, we met these neighbours, and so that was an enormous support, having another family in a really similar situation, going through something that we could relate to, and so we kind of developed this fantastic relationship with them, and really got ourselves through with the bleak times of really being able to support each other and have quite sort of kind of black humour about some of the things that just seemed unimaginable and that we were all dealing with, and so that was really supportive. Dancing and going to Five Rhythms, I had a local group. My teacher there was incredibly supportive. That was amazing. I think often we think if we're going to give feelings attention, they're going to get more fixed, and yet it was a way of really working through feelings and giving feelings expression, and then I would be able to go home and function. And I'm so good at being civil and contained and coping, and so there was a way of just undoing all of that and getting really messy and letting go of of those feelings, and then feeling that I could carry on again. So when the horrendous situation with my baby happened, by that time I'd maybe been dancing this practice for 5 years, I think, maybe more. And I remember one point of standing in the hospital. The baby who was disabled had to have this operation on his spine, and the baby who was well had a temperature, and they were wanting to run tests on him, and I was feeling absolutely like I was not able to cope at that point. And I remember at that point thinking, I need something to change here. And I remembered my teachers over and over again saying to me, breathe. And I was able to stand there in the middle of this hospital with, I think, one baby was in one ward, another was in another, and take a breath and feel my feet in my shoes on the ground, which sounds like an incredibly simple thing. But in that moment, it felt profound, and it changed my sense of being able to cope with this torturous situation. And I knew that I needed to be able to be present for these two babies and to be there. And just taking that breath and feeling my feet was huge. And all those hours and hours and hours of dancing and sweating and listening to my teachers, it felt that it was worth it in that moment of being able to know that I could cope with this. It was tempting to collapse into the grief of it. It was tempting to say yes to the sleeping pills they were offering me. We had a really good therapist at the time, and she helped us enormously, particularly with seeing that we are different and the amount that we were trying to change each other. And she helped us to see that the only person we could change was ourselves. I think one thing is that we took the commitment to each other seriously. And now that was 11 years ago. And we are now a really strong, well-resourced, resilient couple. We've been through this huge amount, and we love each other deeply. I can't imagine having a better relationship than the one we've got now. So even though we're a regular, ordinary couple, I think we have done amazingly well. Having the therapy of going to talk to someone was a way of making sense of things, and you being in movement was a way of moving with that really didn't make sense, of the kind of really giving expression to that was beyond my realm of making sense with anything, and to change the way I looked at things. So actually I think the two worked really well together. My husband really supported me to do the dancing. He would look after the babies while I was doing that. He would reorganise his work so that he could support me to do that. And so that really helped. That really knowing that he was supporting me to feel my feelings in a way that was very different to how he was feeling his feelings and how he was coping. People told us that it was a rare thing for couples to stick together, and maybe that helped us somehow feel like, oh well, we're gonna buck the trend and we're gonna stick together. No, sick babies don't need to cause divorce, and maybe if the resources are there, lead to couples being strengthened together and finding a way of deepening their bond together. There's this kind of preconception that we dance when we're happy, and yet this kind of dance is a way to move however we are, which is the thing we have to do in life anyway. We have to get up even when we're feeling distressed or in crisis or stuck or like staying in bed. So the dance is a really great kind of metaphor for practicing that on the dance floor, for having feelings and finding a way to move them.
For in this temple, I feel no torment. There is a tempest where my fears lie dormant. For in this temple, I feel no temptation. There is a tempest where my love lays patient. Where my love lays I'm a smiling sinner, a sinner in my grave. But don't do a spirit that never behave, enchanted by nature. Well, if nature is free, then why are these chains? Why are these chains? Why are these chains around my neck constantly?